So we all like to go out and buy these cameras with a lot of megapixels, and people brag about how many megapixels they have, but reality is that you don't even have them if you don't have the right lens. So some people buy an expensive body and then they put a cheap lens on it. The problem is that the lens is not able to resolve the amount of lines per millimeter as what your sensor can do. So don't buy a high density sensor if you don't have the right glass. We as photographers love to brag about our camera, how many megapixels we have. And this one is a 36 megapixel camera, and that's it. And the more megapixels we have, the better the camera, we think. The more detail, the more sharpness we can get. Well, the reality is that the glass is far more important. And cheap glass cannot provide you the details that expensive glass can do. A full frame sensor has a fixed dimension, 36 millimeters wide by 24. And this specific one, which is fitted in a Nikon D800, is a 36.4 megapixel camera, meaning it has 36,000 pixels on that little surface that we have right here. Every pixel is about 4.8 micrometer. So it equates to 0.004,88 millimeters. So that's very, very small. And in other words, all these pixels are arranged in a matrix like this, horizontal lines and vertical lines. And together they make up basically your complete array of pixels, 36.4 megapixels. Now, all these pixels have a certain size, and you can imagine that if we were able to shine a line on it, then that line would show up as long as the line would not be wider than 4.88 micrometer. If the line was wider, or it was not sharp enough, then it would cover multiple pixels. And that's what happens with lenses. Lenses typically are not able to resolve the amount of lines that the sensor can actually capture. So if we look on this sensor, we can say that this sensor is capable of providing about 200 lines per millimeter or 100 line pairs. Now, if your lens is not able to deal with that, then you will lose resolution, and it doesn't make sense to have a large-scale sensor. Now, a lens, and I'm talking about the very best lenses, they have also a diffraction factor. They have problems with uniformity and so on. But I'm not going to get into technical details on lenses. However, we need to realize that even the very best lenses, like the Carl Zeiss lenses, are having a resolution of about 500 lines pairs if you shoot at an f2.8. Now that's great. That is far more than basically your Nikon sensor. However, if you start stopping down the diaphragm and you're ending up on a 5.6, then the amount of lines per millimeter that the lens can resolve is already gone down to about 230 line pairs, which is still more than enough for your Nikon sensor. However, if you crank it up to an f16, then you're down to 100 lines, and after that it starts falling apart, because 100 line pairs at an f16 still matches up pretty well with your sensor. It's about 4.8 micrometer, so this is still good. But everything above an f16 starts to falling apart, and at an f22 you're ending up with 70 line pairs. Now, if you go for cheaper glass, then the issue is even worse, because cheaper glass does not have that resolution capability. So the bottom line is, if you're going out and you buy a very expensive camera body with lots of megapixels on it, buy the right glass with it, because if you don't buy the right glass with it, you will lose resolution, and basically your camera defaults back to a lower end device, maybe 18 megapixels or 20 megapixels, despite the fact that you have the real estate of a 36 megapixel sensor. So that's the whole story about resolution, the ability of a lens to resolve the amount of lines per millimeter. It has to be matched to the sensor, or as close as possible. Thank you for watching.